Welcome to the Great Honey Podcast. I'm Maya, the Amerlin Bee,
I'm Marcelle the Gleeman.
and this is a show where we talk about all things Wheel of Time. If you're joining us from YouTube, please give us a thumbs up and comment. Also subscribe. And because we appreciate comments so much, and we got a really nice one on our last episode a few weeks ago, we kind of wanted to take a couple minutes and discuss it.
Yeah. So this comment comes from, the username is entertainment. Is that correct?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. It says, "Hi, I just found your channel and I would hope that you would indulge me in answering a couple questions if you have the time." Of course we do. I watched the season. It was a bit difficult because the pacing was all over the place for me. The character development was a bit weak. Let me give you a couple examples. He says that, or they say that when the show tried to illustrate the bond between the Aes Sedai and their warders in episode 5, the entire ceremony of Steppen's suicide fell flat for me. Why? Because the audience was introduced to Steppen and therefore was supposed to have been a powerful scene, was just meh for me. Did you like the pacing of the first episode? What did you think about the character development overall? Finally, is it necessary to read the books, or do you have confidence that the storytelling will improve in season 2?
Thank you for your comment, entertainment. I also agree about the pacing, and I think the pacing hurt the character development a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, I feel like that was a sacrifice they had to make in order to get the show approved to keep going, just to see if it would actually make money, because that's what TV executives care about. And so I don't know. That's how I feel about the pacing. I totally agree. And I think it's different for me because I already have the perspective of the characters and who they are and what their stories are. And I don't know, I think that kind of helped with the frustration of not being introduced to enough characters. And Steppen actually is not really, he's in maybe the prequel briefly, or he's like in a random,
he's mentioned,
but he's not actually like a main character in the Wheel of Time series. So he was new to me.
Yeah.
And I liked him. I was like, oh, nice, a new character. I liked all the like random new characters that they added in the show. So
right.
I guess, yeah, that's all what do you think about the first part about the pacing and character development?
The pacing, I think I agree. The pacing was a bit all over the place. And I think specifically in the first episode, I feel like, I don't know if you've seen the most recent Obi-Wan Kenobi show. But they got 2 episodes to kind of, well, I mean, I guess, well, to be fair, Wheel of Time got 3 episodes to start. And now that I think about it, I think really what helps, and to tie in the Obi-Wan Kenobi reference there, is I think it does matter to have like a narrative built for your introductory into the world that's like robust and gives you everything you need to know to get started. And I don't think the first episode did that for the Wheel of Time. I feel like it needed a little bit more time to breathe. So I don't know if that meant that it needed a longer episode, more episodes, like a part 2, something like that to kind of carry it along. But yeah, I did feel like it rushed a bunch of plot points to get through that first episode and get them on the road for the second episode, which, I don't hate the second episode. And like, the whole time I've been thinking about my thoughts about the show, it's kind of more like, I understand where it's going because I've read the series and I understand the characters a lot more than probably someone who hasn't read the story. So I I don't know, I didn't necessarily hate it, but I did understand that. So I mean, I understand the hate that some people would have coming into a series, and they felt that rushed nature to it. So long story short, I think, yeah, the pacing, especially for those first those first few episodes, where it was a bit all over the place, and they kind of landed on episode 5 with Steppen and that whole the Warder plot, and like him dealing with the fallout of his Aes Sedai dying. I think it was important to establish that dynamic, because I don't know how much people would understand that if you hadn't read the story, if you haven't read the books, to understand the Aes Sedai and Warder dynamic. So I think it's important to establish it, though I do think people might have gotten a little a little annoyed with the length of time they spent with that and not with the main characters. And I think that's the problem I had too.
Yeah, I feel like that was more so like I think episodes 5 and 6 in particular were more so for developing Lan and Moraine, and like kind of having what happened to Steppen sort of explain their relationship a little bit more, because it's like not really clear what the Aes Sedai Warder relationship is. I almost feel like
Yeah.
season 1 was more about world building than really like giving
Yeah.
us much character time. I think that was one of my biggest complaints, is that like you don't get enough times of seeing the Emmonsfield Five be together and kind of like have that banter and stuff, which I think is probably one of my favorite parts of the first 3 books, basically,
Yeah.
is just their friendships, and not really getting to see that was definitely hurt the show. But I feel like
Yeah.
a lot of it was establishing the world and the stakes, and I don't know, getting people on their paths. And that's what I'm really hoping for season 2, is that they kind of have it be more character driven and less world driven, because now they don't need to do that legwork, I guess. For
Yeah.
example, like they don't go to the White Tower at all in the first book. And a lot of the introduction of sorry, that's my third co-host, Apollo.
Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about this?
He has not seen it yet, so but yeah, I think I'm really hoping that they kind of go in a more character driven route now, and they don't need to do all that legwork.
Yeah.
Yeah, you made good points. Stick with it.
I think,
and read the books.
I think the books are still worth reading, though. I think
I don't think you
based
have
on what
to.
What's that?
I feel like you don't have to, though. I feel like
I don't think so for the show.
Yeah.
I think what I feel based on, and part of it, I think we responded to them in the comments. Basically, I think the show is going to build on the foundation it's set. That I think the foundations that were set, there were probably, some of it was problematic, like we said, but I think they'll be able to build on that for the second season, and I'm pretty excited for what they're going to do. So, and they don't have COVID restrictions and like the random appearance of a pandemic, an actor leaving in the middle of the actual production. So like, assuming none of that has happened, I think we're going to get a better season in season 2. And some of the stuff that was problematic in building the story, I think what they set up is going to be paid off in the next season. So I'm pretty hopeful for what they're going to do next season.
Sweet. Yeah. Thank you again, Entertainment, for your nice question. And please leave us comments so we can talk about them. I was not kidding when I said let's talk about them.
I do. I enjoy actually engaging people in these questions. So yes.
So now we're gonna pick back up on the Great Hunt. Finally.
I know all you out there were, waiting with bated breath to get to the next chapters of this great book.
Yeah.
Here we are. We're gonna get to it. So we kind of left off last episode, so the episode before last, right?
Yeah.
Or were we kind of talking about where uh you know
They re-steal the horn, basically. That was the kind of the main ending, right? And
right, that we left off with that. I don't know if we necessarily got there in the chapters, but
oh,
essentially, like, right, so Tom has been refound. We found Tom. Tom is alive.
right.
And I think the chapter we kind of left off with was 29, where we are catching up with Domon, Bayle Domon, who has actually been cast. We talked about him last episode.
Very happy about
He's
it.
been cast in the show, so we can, and I think we kind of speculated his role in season 2 is going to probably mirror what's happening here versus what happened in the first book. Um, so basically, he's on his boat, the Spray, which we were introduced to in the first book in Eye of the World. And Matt and Rand and Tom are on that boat, and they take that boat to on their way to Camelin. But in this book, he has basically been engaged by the Shan-Chan, which we were introduced in the show. If you're following along with this stuff, in the show, there's Shan-Chan is introduced at the end of the series as a sort of like antagonistic force that basically descends a giant wave on a child, a single child on the beach.
Yeah, they're not named. That you just see them and they look terrifying. But
yes,
they're the Shan-Chan.
And basically what happens here is Bayle Domon is, he doesn't see a way around interacting with them. They have basically Aes Sedai, as far as he can tell, captured, and they can wield their power. The Shan-Chan can wield the power of Aes Sedai, as far as Bayle Domon can tell. And basically, start stirring up the one power and like causing like big like whirlpools or whatever, or big like twisters or whatever in the water, which he can't really do anything against. So he's just like, I'm just going to surrender. And luckily for him, when he surrenders, Iganin is the captain of the Shan-Chan ship that boards his ship, and basically is instructs him about the oaths that the Shan-Chan expects of everyone that live in the world of our main characters. They expect that they would follow some oath that apparently their ancestors gave, that most of our main characters have no knowledge about. Bayle has no knowledge about this oath, but Iganin is explaining to Bayle that essentially you should bow down to us, accept us as the rulers, the rightful ones, and if you do, you will be spared. And so, of course, Bayle does this because he doesn't want to die. And that's kind of where Turok has introduced a Shan-Chan noble who it takes an interest in the Quaindiar that Bayle has. And that ultimately spares his life, I think.
Yeah, he seems to have a large collection of it with him.
Yeah.
Don't know why.
He finds an interest in
likes
like old things.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is basically it. They send Domon to Falma. That's where his ship gets searched, and that's where we leave him. And the White Cloaks also, for a different reason, decide to go to Falma.
Yes.
And then we're back with Rand.
We got two. Basically, we've set up two enemy forces in Falma. So, just go ahead and put that as a Chekhov's gun there for Falma. Perhaps it'll be readdressed later in the series.
Why is everyone going to this town?
I don't know. But yeah, so that's basically all we get so far. Then we kind of move on to Rand realizing that, I think last chapter we ended with the realizing that the inn that they were staying in is on fire. He takes off towards the end, him and Loyal, and the inn that they were staying in is on fire. So they, obviously have to deal with that. And Huron has been attacked they were able to rescue him, but they have to basically recover what they can. And essentially all Rand is able to recover is the banner, the dragon's banner. And the horn and the dagger have been stolen.
Again.
Yeah, again. I really wonder if the show's going to deal with that, like the retread of that. It kind of really hurt my enjoyment of that series, because it's just like, why did they have that's a scene where he steals it back from Fane, and then Fane steals it back, and like a few chapters later, it's kind of like a weird plot point.
Yeah.
I hope they don't do that in the show.
I hope so too. And let's fake out deaths. Let's hold off on those.
Yeah, exactly.
But the smoke from the fire of the inn attracts a certain party of travelers by the name of Ingtar, Perrin, Matt, and the Shienarans, and Varen.
And like, I think the funniest part about this is like when Rand realizes, like, after barely getting out of that building with the dragon banner, and like him and Loyal trying to like sneak through the smoke, and like there's a whole bunch of description of like how difficult it is to get out of that building because it's on fire. And like he finally realizes that like Matt and Perrin and Varen and Ingtar are all there, and he's just like, hysteric, because he's just like, you seriously are here the moment we lose the horn and the dagger. He just kind of loses it a little bit, which I think is fair for the situation for Rand. The guy never really gets a break.
No.
And spoiler, he continues to have very hard breaks going for it. But this one is another one on that trail of hard breaks to come.
Yeah. And then I guess another kind of piece of them all getting back together is they have to make a plan. And somehow the Aes Sedai kind of seems to become in charge again, but also Rand in a weird way, which is an interesting kind of, he like starts bossing everyone around, and then he's like, oh, sorry, Ingtar.
Yeah. It was a weird sort of like, because like, several chapters now we've been having Rand kind of order or be the one in charge of Ingtar, or of Huron and Loyal.
Yeah.
And when he gets back with the team, he starts like formulating a plan. He's like, we'll do these things, and like everyone's like, especially Matt, but Perrin to a lesser extent, and Varen are like, what? You're like in charge now. But it's I think it makes sense. Like, this is one of the aspects of Rand. This is when I really started to like Rand in this book, because like it seems so natural. Like I feel like Robert Jordan kind of wrote these characters in a way that like when Rand started taking over and taking control, even though like he was so like hesitant to, all of the characters have been hesitant to take control. Except maybe Egwene, I think can take control readily, but it took him a minute to actually assume the role, and when he does, he kind of like just gets into it. It makes sense to him. He's the one. Everyone else is kind of floundering around what to do, and he's like, I'll do this. And it kind of takes him back a second when he realizes like he's doing this in front of people he wouldn't have normally done this in front of.
Remind me, how do they figure out that Lord Barthanes is a potential dark friend, and that he might have some information on where the horn is and the dagger?
That's a very, very good question.
That's okay. We don't have to go over it, because basically they're like, oh, like Varen's like, oh, I can get us into Barthanes's lair palace for a party. Right. And then Huron just goes, oh wait, Rand, weren't you just invited to a party at Lord Barthanes's house?
I feel like wasn't it a question if he was a dark friend or not, and they kind of like weren't sure?
Maybe.
Or was it like an understanding that he was a dark friend?
I don't know. I feel like it was just like he is either a dark friend or he is somehow associated with them or just like kind of sketchy.
Yeah.
And so, but he's also very powerful and very like he was the Lord in charge of digging up that very large, is it Sangreal? Is that
Yeah.
the big ones?
Sangreal, I think, is the
Yeah.
correct pronunciation.
And trying to
There's so many pronunciations that we've probably gotten wrong, but just we do our best here.
I don't know. They go to his house and they have a whole kind of cover story where Rand is a lord and Perrin stays behind because his eyes will freak people out, I think is basically.
Right. Yeah.
So he stays, waits for everyone. Loyal goes, Huron goes as his like I guess bodyguard or
like I think they call him like a manservant or something.
yeah,
like that. Maybe that's not the exact words they used, but him and Matt are essentially like the servants for Rand, which Matt is really not liking, obviously.
This is one of my first points in the books where I started to like Matt just because his indignance about having to pretend to be Rand's servant for at max 2 hours was just very funny to me.
It's really good. I think it does help to like kind of like, I don't know, broaden his character a little bit, because I feel like he's been so, I don't know, as of this point he's kind of so like aligned with the dagger, aligned with the like corruption of it, and not able to actually be himself. So it's so little of the book has been focused on him as an actual character. So it's nice to actually get him to have some human moments in this later part of this.
Yeah, that is kind of a weird thing about Matt, that you're just like, who is this person? Why are they friends with him?
Yeah, the whole time in the first up to this point, I'm just like, why do they care? Even in the show, it's just like Matt is seemingly the black sheep of their friend group, and it doesn't seem like Perrin or Rand particularly care for him until like they get struck on this journey. But I think the show does a good job of kind of showing that he's the one that kind of holds them together and seems like the moral glue, especially obviously before he hit the actor that plays Matt in the show and left is the series. But I feel like there was a bunch of parts before they split up where he was like the one who kind of, when there wasn't some sort of tension, he kind of smoothed it over.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think of this scene overall? The Lord's house and all
it's like a
Ocean's
11.
like a heist.
yeah. I mean, like Rand, a bunch of people playing positions they don't want to play. Rand doesn't want to be a lord. Matt does not want to be a servant of Rand at playing a lord. But I think this is interesting, and I think to a certain extent, this whole game, the Days Daymar, is like kind of the foundation. And I'm pretty sure this book came out before Game of Thrones.
Yeah,
probably was an inspiration for Game of Thrones in some ways, but maybe not totally. But this is a very interesting like aspect of this book, because it it's something that they Robert Jordan tries to develop here, and having these farm boys essentially like play this game with these people who are playing like essentially three-dimensional chess and like basically beating these people, but they think Rand is playing, specifically Rand, and Turok is, or not Turok, but Barthanes is thinking like Rand's playing this like intriguing like level of this game, and it's just like just sheds a light on how incompetent all this is.
Meanwhile, Rand is literally looking at the horns that the band members are playing with and seeing if
Yeah,
one of them is the horn of Valir.
yeah, exactly. Like they're just not on the same level. But I think the way that Barthanes is like, dealing with this is so it makes it. I think it builds on a good, because the Des Mar idea, the idea of like the Game of Thrones, is all built on this, the idea that these people are doing all this back room plotting and all this stuff to kind of steal thrones, get power, that kind of thing, and which is really intriguing, and it kind of continues throughout the series. So we kind of get introduced to it here, and Rand gets his first. Importantly, Rand gets his first bite at this sort of like political
intrigue. Yep.
Basically, we kind of like, and hang on, maybe we might want to cut a little bit, but
yeah, we're at 25 minutes so far.
Okay. So I want to say, all right, so this is like,
so I'm thinking the only other things
chapter with Tom and Fane in between here.
Yeah, so we should probably talk about Tom getting like being seen with Rand, because then shortly after Tom's girlfriend gets murdered,
Iced, yes,
and then fridged.
Yeah.
And they should probably take that out of the show too, shouldn't they?
Hopefully,
like the whole Denna.
Yeah, hopefully they don't do that.
Yeah, because I think people will get mad.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tom gets sucked in because his girlfriend gets killed, and then Fane somehow leaves a note for Rand saying that he can meet Fane in Tomon Head, aka Falma.
Yes.
To get the horn. And then Rand's like, we need to go. And everyone's like, how do you know? Because Rand is the Dragon Reborn, but he won't say it.
He won't say it, of course.
But he's like doing the things that he knows he needs to do as the Dragon Reborn, which is a funny thing about Rand.
And basically like what happens from there, I think, is like we get a chapter of Fane who gets involved with Turok from the Shan-Chan. He's a lord of Shan-Chan, which I think we talked about last week, maybe was cast recently.
Mm-hmm.
So that's this stuff might all happen next season.
Yeah,
we don't know, but basically Fane is setting everything up so that Tomon Head, or Falma, is going to be where everyone meets up, right? And Rand buys into that. And that's kind of all we basically devise a plan to get to Falma quickly. And they try to use the Waygate at Kyrian, but it's like there's like a Machin Shin there that like is guarding seemingly, or like at least aware that people might be using the Waygate there. So like they can't actually use that gate. And they have to kind of figure out a different way. And Rand basically has to, and Varen kind of helps him utilize a Waygate after they, realize that several, because they basically, all right, so
I think that's at the second Waygate when they go to the steading. That's where they have to basically fight off Machin Shin, and that's when she realizes that he can channel.
Yeah. And, so we kind of go to Steading Sofu, right? Which is, a steading where the Ogier live. And I don't believe this is not the steading where Loyal's from, right?
No.
Because Loyal's from Shanghai, right?
Yeah.
And this steading, though, like they do have a Waygate outside it, and basically they travel to this Waygate, or they travel to the steading to use the Waygate, and have to encounter Aiel here, that are also at the Waygate, and they're there for the one who comes with the
Comes with the
dawn.
dawn. Yeah.
Yeah, which, you know, I think Matt and Perrin kind of theorized that that's probably Rand. But you know, Rand doesn't say that to them, but you know, there's a sort of altercation there with the Shienarans and the Aiel. But in this setting, you know, the Ogier do not want fighting. It's supposed to be a peaceful place, and they're able to calm both parties down, and they're able to actually get the leader, or the one of the heads of the steading, to lead them to the Waygate, which is you know, kind of engrossed with the Machin Shin, which keeps them from using it.
Which means that it followed them.
Yeah.
Which is unusual because it's
Yeah.
supposedly an entity that can't be controlled by anyone or anything, even though it is like technically aligned with the dark.
Yes. And it's weird because it's like a third party almost. It's like not necessarily, I mean, I think it can say it's aligned with the dark in that it doesn't like for anything to live. But I don't think it's necessarily aligned with the dark one. It's like as a entity all its own, though.
Yeah, just another negative influence.
Yes. So they end up having to go to essentially a portal stone, which was
Rand learned how to use thanks to Celine.
Yeah. And that's kind of where we get to this big scene, which is affectionately called the flicker scenes, because of how Robert Jordan denotes that changes are happening within the magic that's occurring, and the essential the portal stone itself. You can use it to travel, but you have to be able to channel to use it.
And you have to know where and when you want to go, right?
Right. Exactly. And Rand has literally no idea how to do this, but Varen, who is kind of guiding him through this process, also doesn't have enough power to use it, or understanding to use it. And so she's kind of just like, you know, fronting as the person who is using it, even though it's actually Rand. And Rand has no idea what he's doing. And so when he uses the portal stone to travel to Falma, he basically sends them through a series of alternate worlds, which you know, they call you know, affectionately on Twitter of Time and other places, they call it the FLICKERVERSE, where it's basically described as these different, it's kind of like the multiverse idea, the concept of like, if you live over and over, or if you have multiple versions of yourself, you would do different things based on the context of the worlds you live in. And that's kind of what we get here. And we get several instances of what life would be like for Rand, because we're in his mind during these instances. And I don't know, there's a lot of it that, and most of for Rand, it's like realizing
he dies like a couple tragic deaths. There's one where he grows old with Egwene, right?
Yeah.
But he like is kind of, he goes mad sometimes, and Egwene just helps him through it. Yeah. There's a couple where Egwene dies, or like something happens with Tam, his father.
There's a few where like he isn't necessarily the Dragon Reborn, but he seems to always be able to channel in every one of these, or at least the ones that he is recalling here in the book. But you know, there's a particular one where he kind of serves on the Queen's Guard.
Oh yeah.
And he can channel during that. And you know, all these instances of his life, he lives them all, which is kind of this is one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because I think this is the most intriguing part. And it's like I kind of wanted to rush to get here, because it's like
Yeah.
I want to this is the Wheel of Time. This is
Yeah.
the ethos of it kind of being played out in a way that we haven't seen yet. Like, we understand that like everyone has a past life or, a future life to come, right? But we've never kind of experienced lives that they might have lived.
I guess the only taste we've had is in that village when Rand keeps rewatching the Trollocs attacking that town before they get split up. And there's also some flickering in that too, I think.
Yeah. It's literally like it's a sort of like, it's basically like he's basically tapping into, if you've seen, I'm not going to spoil this movie, but the Multiverse of Madness with the Doctor Strange news.
I haven't watched it yet. I said I was going to watch it and I didn't.
But obviously there's like a tapping of like alternate versions of yourself. And like, basically the idea is you're always you in the Wheel of Time, but you live in different lives. You live in a different time period. You live over and over again. And that's the whole idea. And so every time he's reborn, he lives a different sort of life because of who he's born to, the setting in which he's born. And I think this is the first time you kind of get that sort of idea played out in a like real way. Because not only does Rand live through these multiple lives, everyone, all the Shienarans, including Ingtar, including Massima, Uno, Matt, Perrin, Varen, they're all living and experiencing all these various versions of themselves. Basically, we kind of get this sort of like experience where they're living all these various versions of themselves. And then once they actually end up, Rand is able to get them to Fama, or to the Waygate, or not the Waygate, the Portal Stone and Fama, or Tumlin Head. He's, everyone kind of is like realizing, okay, I'm back to my original self, and I've experienced all these various lives. And like both Matt and Perrin are like, specifically Matt is like, I would never, like apparently he, Matt experienced a bunch of lives in which he like gave Rand up and told people that he could channel, and he feels super bad about it. And like Perrin is like, I hope the show can land this, because this is important to me. I think it's important to like land the stakes of this, because I think it plays out, and I'm not going to spoil anything, but I think it plays out for the rest of the series, honestly, the fact that they had this experience.
Yeah, like the idea that that literally anything could happen. Because I think right before Rand chooses which symbol he wants on the portal stone, he kind of just leans into the fact that he's ta'veren, and that he like somehow inherently knows. I don't remember exactly how he says it, but he kind of just is like, you know what? I've been pretty lucky. I'm going to go with this one, when he's down to like 2 directions, basically.
Yeah.
And so I think that kind of like makes you think maybe that could have not gone as well as like he expected if they were on a different timeline.
The ta'veren thing, I think, is, I don't know how they're going to play that out in the show, but in this scene, and like for Matt, Perrin, and Rand throughout the series, it always plays like a pretty important factor. But yeah, I think a lot of times, like even in the first season with Moraine, she's just like, I'm gonna trust the pattern here.
Yeah,
I feel like they do a lot of that, which is like, might not work out. Like, if it was Game of Thrones, they probably all die in the first episode.
Yeah, like one thing I've been thinking about revisiting these chapters is, I guess, kind of, because they all say that. I think even Varen, when they're talking about, like when they first get reconnected with each other, she's talking about how, oh, the wheel weaves as the wheel wills, like blah blah blah. Like I feel like in the show they're gonna have to cut some of that because it's gonna get old and it just feels like plot armor in like a normal circumstance.
Yeah.
But that's okay. But I love this scene.
I think it does such a great job of like illustrating what the wheel means. I mean, for
Yeah.
me, it really helped kind of clarify what that meant in the series, because I think I understood, but I think having it play out like viscerally for everybody actually really
Yeah.
helped me.
Yeah. And like it's one of those, like you hear they've been kind of throwing in more names of heroes of old. Rand repeatedly gets called Luz Theron as he's going through all his different lives. And
Yeah.
at this point, you still don't really know who those people are. Like while Perrin is waiting for them to get back from the ball, he's reading a Jane Farstrider book.
Yeah.
And it's like, who's Jane Farstrider? There's
Yeah.
just all these names that are being dropped and you don't know necessarily who they are. So it's a very strange way that Robert Jordan introduces things. Like it's so dense and there's so much, but then there's also so much that you just don't know and you can't
Yeah.
Google it.
I wonder, like, there's not too many series that I've read that are this long, but like the amount of stuff that he is woven into these first books is almost like, how much did he have planned out? Like in an opposite way of like what I think of like Star Wars. I don't think, there's much planned out with Star Wars,
It was a space
other
western.
than, yeah. But this, I feel like he's got so much that was planned out that I think he knew a lot of what he was going to do going into it. And I wonder if having someone else finish the series kind of helped that. Because, I can see like a writer losing sight of that, but if someone who was like hired to finish the story based on these parameters.
Game of Thrones.
Yeah. I mean, come on. Someone probably needs to finish that for him, I think.
Yeah.
But
I bet if he asked Brandon Sanderson to do it, he would.
I think he would. I think it would be loved, honestly. I think it would bring a lot of energy to the story, but I'm not going to, I don't know if Brandon Sanderson has that. I don't know if he's got that sort of like, that's his genre. I don't feel like I've read anything like
really
that.
dark.
Yeah, from him. So I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, so that kind of brings us to it. So we get to Falma.
And they've
at the end
time traveled.
Yeah, we've time traveled
4 months
into the future.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, do you understand what's happening at this point? I feel like none of the characters really. I mean, I think Varen is able to understand that they're the time frame and explain it to everybody. But
yeah, seems like everyone just is taking things in stride at this point.
Yeah. And for Huron and Loyal and Rand, I'm just like, these guys are just like traveling in and out of time. Like I don't even know where they are half the time.
Yeah.
But we're here. We're gonna get to the ending strides of this series, I think. And I think the way we've mapped it out, I think we've got 2 more episodes left, right? Hopefully, if we do it correctly. Then we get to the end of this book. Perhaps we might do a bit of a jump to get there, but I think we'll make it.
I have faith in us.
Yes, this is a good book, and I think honestly, when we get to the Great Hunt or to the Dragon Reborn, that book will kind of fly through. I think I was like looking at it, and I'm just like,
it's like a novella compared to this book.
Yeah, this book has so much going on.
Yeah,
that it's almost like a few different books in one, a little bit. So yeah, basically, we'll start back up the next episode with basically being in Falma and figuring out what the crew's going to do with the, you know, the need to get the horn, the need to get the dagger.
They're early, right? So they have to kind of wait around for the horn, which is funny.
So at this point, they actually have a sort of, they have the advantage for once.
They have the high ground. See how
yes, a very important place to have in a battle. So hopefully this will work out. And we kind of want to see the team back together and figure out how, of course, Nynaeve and Egwene play into this. And of course, Moraine and Lan.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, we got a lot of people to catch up on. But yeah, thank you for being with us for our 15th episode of The Great Honey. A multiple of 5. Amen. Find us on Instagram and Twitter as Great Honey Pod, The Great Honey on TikTok, and The Great Honey anywhere you can find podcasts, as well as on YouTube. We'll be releasing new episodes every other Friday-ish. Until then, see you around.
See you around.